Hello, everyone. Joining us today is Dr. Clayton. He is a clinical hypnotherapist who specializes in habit control, smoking cessation, and weight loss. He has also been training other therapists for over 25 years. And fun fact about him, he actually helped Olympic sprinter Tonique Darling, if I'm saying her name correctly, win the gold medal in the 2004 Olympics in Athens. So for those of you who are into sports, you actually can use hypnotherapy to do better. And he's here with me today to talk about dreams. So, just want to say really quickly about dreams. They are very interesting, right? A lot of the time, we don't really understand what our dreams mean. We just wake up sometimes in a cold sweat from a crazy dream, but they can be about many things that really need attention in our life. Often we do ignore it. So, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the introduction. Yes, as you said, dreams are very interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's like a completely different language that we almost but don't quite understand on the conscious level. It's like if someone was talking a language, like imagine if you had somebody come up to you and you can tell they've got something vitally important to tell you that you really want to know that will change the course of your life. But they speak a language that you don't quite, you almost, but don't quite understand. That's kind of how I see dreams. And we have them every single night, all throughout the night. A lot of people don't realize this. Like most people I've talked to think that you don't dream every night. It's like, oh, I didn't have any dreams every night. But actually you dream not only every night, but multiple times every night. Whenever you kind of, you have a sleep cycle that goes up and down, and it's actually at the top of the sleep cycle that you have your dreams. And then every time you go back to the top, you start dreaming. And a lot of times the unconscious mind understands something that you, the conscious mind, doesn't understand. So it will try to express it in the way that it can, not having any logic. Imagine if you just had no logic whatsoever, like your brain wasn't able to do that, and all you had were images. That is essentially, and then you had to try to communicate something to someone. It would have to be in pictures and stories and sounds and memories, because your unconscious mind doesn't pull things from the future. Every single thing you've ever seen in a dream is a puzzle piece that you've seen in the past before. So let's take all these memories divided into puzzle pieces and try to throw them at you in some kind of coherent picture to try to send some kind of message. And sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not. But this is going on every single night, all throughout the night. And the little bit we remember sometimes can be very hard to understand, but they can be key to revealing why we're having the problems we're having. So, for example, like if someone has a lot of anxiety, your unconscious mind might be trying to convey that through your dreams. This is what's going on. This is what we need. Maybe they're just reflecting, or your brain's trying to problem solve, whatever it is. But if you don't understand that, then it's going to be, you're missing out. It's not being wasted, but you're missing out on a lot of the potential that you could if you were to understand your dreams.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for explaining that. So, can we talk about one dream? Can you mention one dream that really stands out to you?
Yeah. And I've done hundreds. So like whenever I have a client, sometimes it's usually not our first go-to thing, but like dream therapy is something that I do pretty frequently. So if there's any kind of, like, let's say they have anxiety and we've had a few sessions and there's not as much movement as we want, then a lot of times we'll do like dream analysis. Because imagine if you were, and I will get to your question in just a second, but
Yeah.
imagine if you were, trying to communicate with someone and they just weren't listening. Either maybe they weren't
Hmm.
hearing you at all, or they weren't understanding, or they weren't trying to understand. Then your goal, which might be to decrease the anxiety, would not be the top thing on your mind. You're trying to communicate something. And so by going through the dreams and kind of analyzing them and interpreting and talking about them and just spending time on them helps your unconscious mind feel heard. And just like people, conscious minds, when you feel heard, you're able to then start listening to what the other person needs. And then you can kind of come to a connection with your conscious and your unconscious mind. So, with that in mind, here, I'll give you a really interesting example. And this is so a dream that my wife had.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And this is so for her whole life, she had this dream, or I don't know how long, but it's been like years, more than 10 years. She had this dream. Oh, she had repeating dreams of losing her luggage. So
Hmm.
she'd be at like the airport, her luggage would be gone. And it would be like almost every night she'd be like, oh, I had the lost luggage dream again. And she didn't know why. And it was just bothering her. And it was just, she like she always lost her luggage. She never found it. And, this went on for years. And then here's the
Um,
crazy thing that happened. So one night I had a dream where my wife and I were at a retreat or something, and it was time to move on to the next activity. And I was kind of the last one out. And I looked back, and I didn't even think about any kind of connection with her dream. But I looked back and I was like, oh, my wife left her bag. So I went over and I grabbed it and I brought it with us to the next location. And then I woke up and I told her about that. And she's like, you found my luggage. And even though she had had that dream literally thousands of times, she never had the lost luggage dream ever again. It was
oh,
like
really?
resolved for her. Like it was like in my dream, I like resolved that dream for her. And she's literally never had that recurring chronic dream ever again.
That's, could you think honestly that whatever was causing her to have that dream, she resolved it like in her waking life, do you think?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I think that's exactly what happened. It's again, I
Hmm.
think it's the idea that your unconscious mind seeks connection
Hmm.
and with the outside world, with you, etc. So it's like, again, imagine if you were saying the same thing every night for years, and everyone's like, oh, wow, that's weird. I wonder what she's saying. And like no one ever understood you. And then finally, someone comes in and they're like, oh, you mean this luggage? And
Crazy,
suddenly I
right?
was like, wow, that's amazing. Someone actually heard me and connected with me. So I think I 100% know that it's that connection, which is a lot of the reason we do the dream therapy, that resolved that issue for her. We're trying to connect with the unconscious mind and help the unconscious mind feel heard. Because
Hmm.
when that happens, your unconscious feels suddenly, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You're not going to worry about, like getting a job until you're eating. So you're simply not even going to be aware of your higher order problems. Like you're not going to be sitting there worried about self fulfillment if you are thirsty and you can't find water. That's going to be top of mind. So until you clear that out and be like, okay, so let's address this and become aware of it and talk about it, your unconscious mind isn't free to move on to higher order needs. Another really interesting one that I had. So um, my so there was like an end of the world thing going on, like where there were aliens coming or something like that, and my parents were in the dream and they were sort of coordinating people getting on the escape ship or whatever. They were helping with that. And my job was to go out like into the city and try to find people who were stuck or they couldn't get to the escape ship or whatever. And so here's the really interesting part. I was in a building and I saw two people who looked just like my parents. And I could tell they were clones of my parents. But here's the really, to me was really interesting. They thought I was their son, but I was fully aware that they were clone parents. Like they weren't really my parents. So, and I had to leave and, things were like, we had to go right now or whatever. And so my dilemma was, are these like they're clones? Are they really people? Should I, maybe sacrifice other people to save these two people? They think they're my parents, but they to me they were clearly not, but they thought they were. So I'm
Hmm.
like, do they have the same value as a regular person that was born normally? And should I take up two of my spots to get these two clone parents? And could I even live with myself if I left them behind, even though they were just clone parents?
That's like,
So
that sounds so scary. Like, who are you people?
yeah. Well, I mean, and it's like, there to me there was no fear in the dream because I knew they were like well-meaning clone people that thought, how much weight does them thinking that they are real people have in what they deserve?
Yeah.
So it was just, I mean, to me, that was, I don't know. I still, I think that, kind of represents a lot of the difficult moral and ethical struggles that we have every single day. And like, how do we make decisions about things when when it's not at all clear how to do that? So,
Someone starts to understand what that dream means after you decipher it for them. How does hypnotherapy help them?
so the nice thing about hypnotherapy is that it's kind of a heightened learning state. Here's how I explain it. There's a lot of ways I explain it, but here's the one that's most appropriate for this. Imagine if you were taking cooking classes. Like we open a company, you and I open a company where we teach cooking classes. But the great thing about these cooking classes is that we have magic lights on the ceiling that help you learn 10 times faster. So come to our cooking class, and not only do we give you excellent cooking lessons, but you're doing it under these magic lights that help you
Mhm.
learn 10 times faster. That essentially is what hypnosis is in my mind. So hypnosis itself doesn't do anything. Like, for example, if I just went into the building, stood under the lights, and inputted no knowledge, the lights would be essentially do nothing.
Yeah.
So hypnosis is an amplifier for whatever therapy you're doing. So let's just say, for example, we start talking about dreams, we discuss it for a while, and then we go into the hypnosis and we further explore that concept. That would be a very deep experience for the person. They can, I think that would be a much deeper connection between the conscious and their unconscious mind, and that can create a lot more movement in the actual therapy. So it can
Mhm.
be a very powerful experience, and hypnosis amplifies that.